So, Elle here is a certified erotic blueprint coach. She's also a certified life coach and a 200-hour Kripalu yoga coach. Her focus is on empowering men and women to own our authentic sexualities, and she hosts two erotic blueprint workshops with us here, as also a releasing shame workshop. For people who don't know anything about the erotic blueprint, before we get into the other questions, can you just give like a brief overview of what they are and how you like to guide people in your workshops?
Sure. So the erotic blueprint is a framework for understanding your sexuality. So there are 5 erotic blueprint types: sensual, energetic, sexual, kinky, and shapeshifter. And it's just a way of understanding like how you're uniquely wired in terms of what you enjoy sexually and how you are wired in your body. So it helps you to better understand who you are as a sexual being and understand who your partner is. So there's better communication and more sexual satisfaction both ways.
So, what inspired you to focus on your life coaching with this lens and of the erotic blueprint? Can you share a bit more about how you got into it and what led you to become a certified coach?
Totally. So I was actually already a certified life coach, and just more in like a general sense. And then I was going through a program with a woman, her name is Mama Gina. She focuses on women's empowerment and sexuality. Through her, I got a free ticket to an event hosted by this woman, Jaya, who became my teacher, who's the founder of the Erotic Blueprints. So I went to that workshop. I was sort of like, well, it's free, and I've got nothing to lose. I got there, and this was pre-COVID. It was a conference full of people talking about sexuality in a really open way, more than I had ever seen before in my life. And I was just like so impressed by it. And I started thinking about, I had just gone through it and, gotten certified to be a life coach and followed different life coaches. And I was into like self-development stuff. And I realized, in all of that, I never heard anyone talking about sex. And it just really struck me as, in all this talk about, being your authentic self and following your desires and being the best leader you can be, it was like we were talking about all of that with this major piece of ourselves not on the table. And for so many of us, even if it's not, something we talk about openly with everybody, our sexuality is a huge part of who we are, our turn on, right? It's what makes us feel alive. And if that part of us is either suppressed or is in pain or is not alive, that is going to come out as we parent, where we are, how we are at work, how we are with our friends, how we are if we're not happy with our partner, there's resentment building up. Mm-hmm. All of that stuff is under the surface. And so what I love about the sexuality work is it kind of just, instead of talking about like stuff at this level, it just goes straight into like some really deeper stuff that is available for all of us to work on. Yeah, because it's like we're not just a mom over here, a partner over here when we're in the bedroom. We're this person all the time. And so if, let's say, you're, not feeling confident with your partner in terms of your sex life, that's going to show up in some way at work and vice versa.
How do you think understanding your own specific blueprint and then as well as your partner's, how can that change the way you communicate, or like how have you personally even experienced how it's changed in your life?
Totally. So what I love about the blueprints is it's kind of understanding of like, I have a better sense of who I am and how I'm wired. And I think for a lot of people, what that gives them is a sense of permission slip. Like a lot of us have taken on, either from our partners, from our family, from society, different ideas of what we should be versus what we really are. Mm-hmm. And the should be creates all kinds of shame and self-judgment that kind of holds us back from being our full version of ourselves. So when we learn, this is a type, right? It's not just me. There's a sense of permission and relief in recognizing yourself that other people are like this too. So there's that. So it's like kind of that permission slip to be yourself. And then once you know, okay, this is what turns me on. This is what makes me feel safe and alive. Knowing how to give yourself more of that. It's like learning, what flavor you like the most, and learning how to ask, forgive yourself, feed yourself, right? And then once you know what it is for yourself, then you can go and ask a partner, I need more of this, right? So I'll say, for example, I identify as being a pretty sensual person, right? I am turned on by touch and environment and smells and texture and all that stuff. So what does that mean for me, even outside of having a partner? It means that I need to get outside a lot. I need to be in nature. I need to take in the sunshine. I need to sniff the flowers. I need to touch the trees. Like I love all of that environmental stuff. So that's what I can do for myself, even outside of a sexual relationship. Then with my partner, I can communicate. Like I need snuggles. I love touch. Without it, I feel like starving, right? So
Yeah.
I can take care of that in like my own way, and I can communicate to a partner and not feel like I'm needy. Oh, like I'm needy, or something's weird with me because I need to be touched a lot. No, that's just how I am as a sensual, and there are lots of other people like that as well. And then for my partner, in communicating that, right, there's also that then understanding of like, oh, my partner isn't just weird or broken or whatever our judgment we put on somebody because they're asking for things that we don't understand. It's like, oh, okay, there's nothing strange about them. That's just what they need for their type. So it creates also a lot more understanding between partners around what my needs are and what their needs are. And if you really, when you care about someone, right, you want to help them feel loved and happy. So it's like, now I get it. I want to make this person feel happy. They just told me what they need to be happy. I don't have to guess anymore in a way that works for both of us. And I also like to think so that in one way we each have our primary blueprint type, right? Our primary path to turn on. But it's also, you can look at it also as like a flavor, right? So we might have a lot of what we learn about sex in our culture is through porn. And porn is pretty just like penetration, sex focused. And for a lot of people, that's not that satisfying. And they don't know that there's other things out there. So what I also really love about the blueprints is, yes, it's a turn on type, but it's also like, oh, look at this smorgasbord of opportunities of different things that are sex. So, for some people, like, it's not just penetration, like there could be, like role playing and getting into the kink world of role playing and fantasy and mental mind games. Like that's a huge turn on, a huge world of possibility that doesn't fit, what we see on porn. So that's a flavor of sex that you could play with your partner to kind of keep things spicy.
Yeah,
Or maybe you want to play more in energetic realm, right? Like a lot more like space, tease, anticipation. Those are two, like that just opened up the realm of sex way more than just like we get in bed, penetration, done deal. And then the piece of it that I really like about this too is we're talking about sex, but we're also talking, you're a person in a body all the time, right? So the things that turn you on in bed are probably going to turn you on in some way in life too. So for example, I was talking with a client recently. She's into public speaking, but it's also kind of scary for her. So we're like, well, what could be, there's a turn on in the scary. So what's kind of like, kind of the turn on in doing the scary thing, which is being up and talking in front of people. So instead of just seeing it as like a scary thing, it's like, oh, that's kind of sexy, exciting in a way, right? Finding where those parallels are between what's turned you on in the bedroom context and then bringing that turn on into life that's the topic that I get turned on about. How do we take this out of the bedroom and into life?
Maybe we can do one, since you already mentioned that you're sensual. Would you mind leading us through an example using the sensual lens, if that's okay? So people can
Sure.
get an idea. Okay.
Yeah, so what she's referring to is an exercise we do in the class where I ask everyone to close their eyes and listen in as I speak some words from different blueprint types. And the idea of the closing your eyes and listening in here, if I want to make this clear, is that in the 101 class or 201 class, I'm talking about the blueprint types at an intellectual level. But when you really get into this blueprint work, it's not about what you think is your type, it's about your body, right? Because at the end of the day, yes, there's a mental aspect of sex, but it's very much in your body. So it's listening to your body, starting to realize, oh, like, it's this type of type, and it's this type of touch, and this type of language that I'm feeling a reaction, right? I'm getting turned on, and whatever that means for you, as opposed to just like, I think this is what turns me on. It's like, oh, actually, I didn't realize that was going to land a certain way, but I kind of liked it when she said that. So that's what the invitation is here.
Yeah, exactly. It's so different. Like the reason why I loved it as well is because like taking a quiz online to get it different, you can kind of be like, oh, well, I think I like this, or maybe it's your mind trying to trick you into thinking that you like this. But hearing these words, like, you can feel your heartbeat, you can feel that like extraness. So
right, and you might surprise yourself, like, oh, I didn't think that I would like that, but kind of did, right? So no judgment. It's just there's just data of like, oh, I did like this, I didn't like that, and it's just data to explore and things to play with as you keep opening up to, what do you like, what do you not like? It's just honing in on getting clearer and clearer on this is who I am, this is what I like, and with that, you can go out and ask for it. If you're comfortable doing so, I invite you to close your eyes and just take a moment to drop in. So you might feel your feet on the floor, your bum in your chair, and bring your awareness to your breath. So you might notice where in your body you feel your breath most strongly in this moment. For some of us, that might be in our belly. Other of us, it might be the chest or the nose. Just taking a moment here to let go of what's happening around you and connect to your internal world. And so as Bree mentioned, I'm going to say some words that are incongruent with the sensual blueprint type, which is really turned on by the sensory experience of sex. So I'll say a couple words and just notice whether your body has any reaction to this, good or bad. So again, we're talking in the sensual language here. So the sensual, perhaps some words for the bedroom that could resonate for someone who's really sensual would be maybe things like retreat or cocoon, snuggle space, cuddle space. Words for expressing turn on or attraction for someone could be things like, I ache for you. Your smell is intoxicating. Your body is a wonderland. Your skin is so smooth. Or words for intercourse might be things like make love, cherish, envelop. You can open your eyes. So maybe that gives you a bit of a flavor of some sensualish wording, right? I didn't say fuck. I didn't say pound, right? But that has a different quality than make love, cherish, envelop, snuggle, right? And so maybe those words that I said didn't do it for you at all. Maybe you're like, oh my God, I would die if my partner said that to me. All right. So the languaging has a different vibe to it.
Yeah, or maybe some words resonated with you and some didn't. I realized at the end that I'm a shapeshifter. So in each one of your exercises that you led us through, there were like certain words that were like, oh, and then certain words that be like, oh, no. So I was like, why am I feel like I resonate with, and then at the end I was like, oh, okay, I understand now, because like I can kind of flow into different blueprint types, and I'm kind of like a culmination of a bit of all of them.
Yeah, and that's an awesome observation, right? So now there's like, hey, I need a little of all of this. So you can kind of like go up to the buffet and pick a little of this, a little column A, a little column B, a little column C. Yeah. So yes, I know for a lot of us, like especially if it's not something you're comfortable with, talking openly about sex or coming to a class about sex might immediately be like, oh my gosh, that is scary, right? We're talking about really vulnerable things, and common ideas might come up like, what if they say something that I don't feel comfortable with? What if they make me, even my sister won't come to these classes. She's like, you might make me talk about stuff I don't want to talk about. So yes, and so what I try to do in the beginning of class is really create a safe container, right? We're talking about things that are vulnerable. And so creating a space where we all feel safe is sort of basically the ground rules for, okay, for this conversation, these are the rules that we all agree to so that we can feel safe to have these intimate conversations. And also this idea of having a safe container, not only for a conversation, but you can take that idea into anything you do in life. Okay, what is the container within which I want to have a certain experience? It's kind of setting those ground rules so that you and whoever else is engaged in the conversation feel safe, right? Because without safety, that's kind of the baseline for having intimacy.
Yeah, even if like we do this workshop and then we want to share it with our partners, kind of sharing like, there is a bit of like maybe vulnerability in that too, bringing something up like this to our partners. And so like just like laying that kind of down, like, okay, I'm ready to have this conversation, or like that might even, joining a workshop like this might even help us to better want to bring up these kinds of things with our partners and talk about our needs and things like that.
Yeah, and it's because it's so vulnerable to ask for someone what you want, because, well, you might not get it, right? Or you might feel judged for what you want. And if you're with someone who judges you for what you want, then maybe they're not the best person for you to be with. But oftentimes, like, what's happening is just a projection, right? It's probably not about them really judging you. It's about their own lack of self-acceptance and then their own shame or vulnerability, and then kind of projecting that on to the person who brings it up. So in some way, and this is what I really love about the My Sex Bio mission and why I help with these classes, because by being vulnerable and taking responsibility for our needs and what we want and being able to say, to ask for them, it's starting to break those barriers down, right? No, I'm not going to project anymore that it's your fault, that you did this. It's like, I know who I am, and I'm going to ask for it, and I'm going to take that really brave step of being vulnerable.
I think if we were all just okay with being upfront and honest with what we needed, not just in the bedroom, but like in our relationships, you know, setting boundaries, we'd all just be so much better off. And the more we normalize it, it would be like, oh yeah, it's totally fine, that's what you want. And like, if anything, like I'm encouraging it, because I mean, really, from like the partner perspective, like, wouldn't you want to know what your partner wants? And it's just like making it easier for you to give them that, right? So it's like, it should be a win-win for both people, ideally.
Right. If someone says, I want to make you happy, tell me what I can do to make you happy. And you can't, and you don't have anything, you're either too scared to ask, or you don't really want to ask because you might get denied, or because you think they're going to judge you, then you don't get what you want. They don't get a way to please you. It's a lose-lose situation.
Is there any like memorable aha moments or things that your clients have shared with you about these workshops, or any of your work with the erotic blueprints that you want to share?
Yeah. I think what pops into my mind when you ask that first thing is, I had a client, so when I do this work with people, it's a bigger journey. It's not just your type, but we get into like your type and what you're looking for, and anything also that's holding you back from being able to be your fully expressed sexual self. And one of our early conversations, we were talking about, you know, where she's now with where she was versus where she would like to be. And in this case, she was single, and she started to cry. And what it came down to, when I kind of poked a little bit, was she just didn't believe that the kind of man that she wanted existed. She had convinced herself, right, because of past boyfriends, father, you know, all these things in the past, about what was possible for her. So she had this belief that what she wanted didn't exist. And at the end of the day, if you don't think it's possible, then how is it, you know, if you were convinced this thing that you want doesn't exist, how are you ever going to find it? So there was a painfulness in recognizing that she had that belief, but in recognizing that is the belief between you and what you want, and dropping that belief, you can open up to the possibility. So we keep working together. I recommended that she read this book called The Way of the Superior Man by an author named David Data, who writes a lot about feminine masculine dynamics. She ended up writing, okay, it's a great book. So she ends up writing a letter to the universe asking, you know, for this divine conscious man that she had kind of brought into her level of even existing because she read this book. And like, I'm not even kidding, like a week later, she met her boyfriend. So
wow, okay.
That speaks to the power of your mind, right? Like, if you're convinced that something can never be, like, I'm never going to find someone who meets my needs, or no one's ever going to understand me, it's probably never going to happen. So a lot of this work too is just about letting down the barriers, opening up to the sense of possibility that what you want is possible, that the kind of person you'd like to be with that can satisfy you in all the ways you'd like to be satisfied, that person even exists. To me, that is probably much, much bigger than anything else you could learn. So I added the lucid shame workshop because, you know, part of this whole idea of the erotic blueprints is figuring out what's between you and where you want to be with your sexuality, right? And for a lot of us, there is some level of shame shame is an issue in all of society, but particularly around sex, because we've been, you know, based on probably your religion, your culture, the gender you identify with, or the sexuality that you were identified with as a child. All these ideas about, like, you know, what your roles are in society, and the shoulds and the shouldn'ts that go with that. A lot of us then feel shame, especially when it comes to talking around sex. So I wanted to add this class around shame to normalize shame, because shame lives in darkness. And when we pretend that shame doesn't exist, but it does, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger in the shadows. So the way to get rid of shame is to pull it into the light and say, hey, this is what I feel shame about. And kind of look at that and say, is that something I even believe in the first place, right? And you can sort of just dissolve. Like when your shame comes out into the light and you really look at it, it can't live there anymore. Talking about it, looking at it, that's where it drops away. And you can literally, like, it's like dropping like weight and like layers of crap off your body without all that stuff. It's like, well, who would I be if I wasn't ashamed of XYZ about myself, my weight, the way I look, my skin color, my sexuality, my gender? Like, that's freedom.
Yes, amen. Especially because as women, in regards to like sex and shame, a lot of it is tied to our physical bodies, physical selves, and so like we're literally like carrying that with us, like in our vessels, like day to day. So to just like be able to even
Completely.
release some of that, I'm sure it's just like not just a mental, emotional, but also just like a physical, like you can like feel the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give like a very personal share. I have a very small chest, and when I was younger, I felt like incredible shame around that. And I don't feel it anymore, so it's kind of almost hard to remember. But I can look back and remember times where I hated bikini shopping. Like I just felt like I felt so crappy about it, right? And this was my body, the way I was born. But it made me feel intense shame, and I had all these ideas in my head of like, what a woman should look like, and what I had to be if I wanted people to like me, and it was a huge sense of shame for me. And it really did hold me back in terms of being confident in my body, which, had all these other repercussions, even in terms of my life. And it was a slow process to kind of let that go. But I remember it as like a physical sense of pain. And through, this kind of work, letting that go, now I'm just like, this is just who I am. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. But I can remember how physically painful that felt and how different it feels now for that not to be a factor at all. I love my breasts now.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that. I feel like we all have like shame because like for me, like just inspiring as you saying personal share. I grew up. I had like a very large chest at a very young age, so I felt like on the other end of the spectrum, like my body was always sexualized, even when I wasn't trying to make it be. Like I remember being so young and just wearing like the same kind of top that someone my age was wearing, but because I had such a full chest, like it would be like, oh my God, like you're trying to show your boobs, or like my body was always so sexualized. So there was like that side of shame on it that I had to like live, and I always felt very self-conscious. Same thing like bikini shopping, like I can never fit into any of like the ones my size, so I was a small frame but had like these huge breasts. So like it's just so interesting that at some level we all have, whether it's like not enough or too much, or like in regards to our bodies, there's always some level of like shame that society or other people put on us, but like we can decide to just brush it off and feel good in ourselves.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And I think what we're doing here, right? We had the opposite experience, and we both
Mm-hmm.
felt intense shame about it. So it's this idea of like, there's too much, too little, right? Like, what would be the right size? Like, there is no right size, but we all decide that what we are is not the right one. It's too much, it's
Mm-hmm.
too little, to this, to that. And it's awful. But even having the conversation, it's like, oh, other people feel the same way. And there is no one right way to be that would make me feel better. The only way to feel better is just to be exactly who I am, the acceptance of who I am.
Thank you so much, Elle, for joining us. It was great to chat with
Thanks for
you.
hosting me.
And yeah, I'm excited for the workshop, and thank you all for joining. We'll see you later.
Thanks for having me.